The Battle of Rocheserviere was fought at Rocheserviere on the 20th of June 1815, between Vendéan Royalists, who had remained loyal to King Louis XVIII during the 100 Days, and Napoleon's Army of the West, commanded by General Jean Maximilien Lamarque. The battle ended with the defeat of the Royalist forces. 5 days later, the Treaty of Cholet was signed, ending the hostilities. Background: the Army of the West had been formed to pacify the region and support the new French government instigated by Napoleon Bonaparte after his return to Paris at the start of the 100 Days in 1815. While Napoleon marched north to deal with the threat from the British and Prussian armies during the Waterloo campaign, Lamarque was sent to pacify the Royalist stronghold of the Vendée. Assisted by Michel Sylvestre, he left Nantes with 3,000 men on June 11. By the 17th, his force had increased to 6,000 men. He soon learned that a Vendéan army of around 8,000 men under Charles Autichamp and Pierre-Constant Suzanne was concentrating in the vicinity of Rocheservière. Battle: the Vendée Royalist forces were well protected in defensive positions, but were divided into separate armies. Suzanne occupied the heights of Rocheservière, protected to the west by the Boulogne River, which was difficult for an army to cross. Another force under Bertrand Saint-Hubert was in Saint-André-Tres-Voies, 9 kilometers east of Rocheservière. As for Charles Autichamp, he was positioned Viave northeast, 7 kilometers from Rocheservière and 4 kilometers from Saint-André. These positions would be difficult for the Bonapartists to attack. But on June 19, Suzanne's force suddenly withdrew from Rocheservière and occupied Montmaison to the southeast. The Bonapartists took the opportunity to launch an attack on the Vendéans. The chasseurs under Jean-Pierre Trevot clashed with the Vendéans at Le Grol between Rocheservière and Saint-André. However, Suzanne's cavalry were sent in, forcing Trevot to retreat. Suzanne then brought all his troops up to Le Grol. The next day, June 20, Suzanne decided to meet the Bonapartists in battle. He wrote to Autichamp, the commander-in-chief, asking him to join him. But Autichamp refused to move immediately, saying he was securing his position. Suzanne and Saint-Hubert then crossed the Boulogne River and marched to meet the Bonapartists. The two armies met on the moors of the Grand Collet, southwest of Rocheservière. The separate forces of Saint-Hubert and Suzanne were at some distance from each other. The Bonapartists under Trevot first entered into contact with the forces of Saint-Hubert. Saint-Hubert's men were taken in the flank by Trevot's chasseurs, and were routed. Suzanne arrived too late to retrieve the situation. Seeing the rout of Saint-Hubert, he launched a desperate charge at the Bonapartist lines. In the ensuing fight, Suzanne collapsed, seriously wounded by a bullet. Lamarque then ordered his cavalry to attack, and Suzanne's forces broke and fled the field. At Viave, General Autichamp was informed of the fighting at Grand Collet. He immediately marched towards Rocheservière, but only arrived in time to witness the rout of Suzanne and Saint-Hubert. Autichamp then decided to place his men in defense of the bridge over the Boulogne, but Lamarque forded the river, taking Rocheservière, and moved round behind the Vendéans. They panicked and fled, falling back in disorder to the north of Clisson. The next day, General Suzanne died of his injuries at Greffy-Île-sur-Marne. Aftermath. Though the battle was fought 2 days after Napoleon's decisive defeat at Waterloo, neither side was aware of this. The first information to emerge about the wider military situation was news of Napoleon's victory at the Battle of Lyonnais. This led to attempts on the part of the Royalists to negotiate with Lamarque. A treaty was signed 5 days after the battle, in which the Vendéan Royalists agreed to cease operations. When news came through shortly afterwards of Napoleon's defeat. Lamarque convinced the Royalists not to exploit the situation but to allow the area to be occupied by the advancing Prussian troops.